Hey guys, it's here and welcome to PHP tutorial number 22. Today we're going to be looking at the much awaited parameters and arguments tutorial. Now, we talked about last tutorial about scope and how we can't use variables from outside the function inside a function and vice versa. So that kind of gives us a problem if, for instance, we wanted to create the function I've been using as an example for a while now, which is that cost calculator where it does the quantity times the price and then adds on the tax. How would we do that if we can't actually give the price and the quantity and the tax values to the actual function? We'd have to use set values all the time. For our function we'd always have to be using 5 for the quantity and 5 for the price, 2 for the quantity, and 15.5 for the tax. What if we need to change the tax up to 16 because the Prime Minister's decided to pass a bill which changes VAT up to 16%? Well, then we'd either have to modify our function, but maybe some people still use the 15.5. I mean, I know that's illegal, but just imagine that. Some people still use the 15.5. We then have to have two functions. So there must be a way that PHP makes this easier for us by allowing us to set the tax, the amount of tax, and all other variables, the quantity and the price as well. Because what if some person doesn't want to order 2 all the time? They want to order only 1, or they want to order 5 or something. PHP must allow us to set the variables outside the function and then give them to the function. And you're right, it does, and it does that with parameters. Now, remember how whenever we create our function, we have the function keyword, then we have the name, and then we have the 2 parentheses. Well, in between these parentheses, we can actually declare parameters which must be supplied when we call the function. Now, parameters have to be just when we declare the function, we have to type them out as if they're variables. So in this case, I've just typed out a variable called price, a variable called quantity, and a variable called tax. So now, whenever we call the calculate total value function, we have to type out the name, of course, then type out the parentheses, and in between we have to type out 3 comma-separated values, one being the price, one being the quantity, and one being the tax. Now these aren't preset values, quantity, price, and tax. They're just names I've chosen for the parameters. For all we care, these could be average, it's not an average, but whatever. Price, it's not price, but it's quantity. And this could be rubles. I think it's rubles, isn't it? I'm not sure. Yen. These could be yen, okay? And these are just, the names are purely for us, okay? So let's change these back though. Oops, not prices. Quantity. So the names are purely for humans to understand. They're not preset values, so no need to worry about that. But then when we call the function and we pass those values in, and I'll show you how to do that in a sec. You've probably already seen, some of you, because I've been accidentally showing it. But when we call the function and we pass the function those values, it can then use these variables with these names which have had the values which we supplied inserted into them. We can then use these variables inside our function. So as you can see, we're declaring a new variable called total cost and saying it's equal to price times quantity, which are parameters for our function. So those are 2 values which will be used, and the values for them will be supplied from outside the function. And then we're saying total cost times equals tax, because if you want to do increase the value by a certain percentage, you just do 1 point and then the percentage. So in my case, I want to increase it by 15.5% or 15% just for simplicity. So I'd say the tax value is equal to 1.15 or 1.15, technically, because that's how you find 15. You add on 15%. You times by 1 point, and then the percentage you want to add on. Okay. So now we are able to use values from outside in, take them in, and then use them inside our function. And once we've calculated the total cost, we just output them. Now let's see how we call a function which takes parameters. Okay, we just call we type the name, then the two parentheses and a semicolon at the end, of course. And then, like I said, we type in a comma separated list, and we can only have so many parameters. The amount of parameters, of course, directly relates to, sorry, the amount of arguments, actually. These are called arguments, these are parameters. I'll talk about the difference in a sec. The amount of arguments directly relates to the amount of parameters, okay? And you can't supply more, you can't supply less. You have to, well, you can supply less in some cases, but we'll get onto that later. You have to, for the moment, we'll just say you have to supply that exactly the same. So I'm actually going to change these values. I'm going to say outside here,